This is the Louie Tee Network.
Could it be? For me, your me, Louie Tee. Welcome to the 2017 NFL Draft Prospects 101 series, your guide to some of the biggest and hottest names of the 2017 NFL Draft. We're talking edge rushers. And this next guy that I watched on tape, sort of impressive. I mean, didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I actually had a conversation with a Tennessee Volunteers fan before the college football season started. And, you know, the whole talk and rage before the season was of Myles Garrett. And he was like, man, forget Myles Garrett. I'm telling you, Derek Barnett's the best pass rusher in the SEC, blah, 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 blah. And he was going on and on and on. And I was just sitting there listening. And I had no clue who Derek Barnett was. I'm not going to lie to you. And so watching the tape on him, I was thoroughly impressed. I went back, watched some 2015 tape just to see how things compare and contrasted. And again, guy is pretty consistent in what you get from him week in, week out, snap in, snap out, game in, game out. And so that's the type of consistency that if some of these other guys had, they'd be much higher up on some of these teams' draft boards. But nonetheless, I'm speaking of Tennessee Volunteer defensive end Derek Barnett, and this is a guy that I think is a bona fide top 15 pick in this draft. I don't see this guy getting past the 15th pick in the draft at the Indianapolis Colts, and so I think this guy's going to be off the board within the first 15 picks, and let's talk about his pros and exactly why I think a guy like Derek Barnett is going to be off the board in the first 15 picks of the 2017 NFL Draft. So you start with Derek Barnett's size at 6'3", 259 pounds. So why don't we just go ahead and round that to 260? A nice round figure, easy to remember. 6'3", 260 is what this guy is, and it's a really solid size for a defensive end. I think, honestly, looking at Derek Barnett, you could get two things out of this guy. And I think the perfect comp, when I watched him, I tried to figure out, who is this guy? Who does he remind me of? Coming out of college and into the NFL. If you want to stand him up, you can possibly do that. We'll talk about his versatility a little bit later on, so I don't want to get too deep into that. But he reminds me a lot of Nick Perry, who just received a brand new deal from the Green Bay Packers, a guy that was a relentless pass rusher at USC, came into the league, made the transition from defensive end with his hand in the dirt to a stand-up outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense with the Green Bay Packers. I could see Derek Barnett making that same transition. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but his size at 6'3", 260 pounds, I look at him more as a base 4-3 defensive end. But if you wanted to stand him up and put him as an outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense, I think you could actually get away with it. I think he's athletic enough. I don't think he's a great athlete. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but I think he's athletic enough to get the job done. But what you want this guy doing is going after the quarterback. Here's some of the reasons why. His next pro, get off and timing the snap. That's the next pro. His get off and ability to time up the snap is tremendous. I talked about Solomon Thomas doing the same thing. These two guys, I think, are the best in this particular draft at timing up the snap, getting off the football, and getting a head start on the tackle, getting out of his stance, or in the case of a Solomon Thomas, the guard or the center, what may have you. Derek Barnett does a great job of timing up the snap, having a burst, because he is not the greatest athlete. And I always ask myself, why is he continuously winning on the outside with straight burst and explosion? And it's because he has a great ability to time up the snap and get off the football and give himself a head start. And so I think Derek Barnett's one of his best traits is not only his ability to get off the snap and have a little bit of a burst, but this next pro, to me, is what sets him apart as an outside edge rusher, and that's black belt hand artist. And so what that simply means is this guy knows karate, okay? He can fight with his hands, has quick, explosive, dynamic hands at the point of attack. He's one of those guys that when he gets off the football, does a great job of swatting down the hands of a tackle and ripping and dipping and doing what he needs to do in a small, tight, confined space. That tackle looking to get his hands on him. No, you're not. Hands down, man down, getting to the quarterback. Barnett does that as well as anybody in this draft. I think him and Jonathan Allen have probably the best set of hands in terms of fighting going to the next level, which is going to help aid and abet both of them at getting to the quarterback. His ability to use his hands is the reason why he left the SEC and Tennessee more primarily as the best sack getter in Tennessee Volunteers history, and left the SEC as the only player, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, to have 3 consecutive double-digit sack seasons. And this guy's decorated, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But his hand usage and his get-off combined the two, and that's why this guy was so prolific at getting to the quarterback at Tennessee. Stop at the point of attack. He's just as solid as the day is long at setting a physical edge. Now, sometimes it can be a little bit over-aggressive and take poor angles, go inside, and allow the edge to be gotten. But when he sets a physical, when he makes up his mind, I'm setting a physical edge here, he's the type of guy that you want in the run game. And that's why I think he could transition to an outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense, because you can't block this man with a tight end and expect him not to set a physical edge and blow some stuff up. And when you're in a 3-4 defense, that's what you generally get is a edge rusher on a tight end. And if you can whip a tight end's ass as an outside linebacker in the run game, and you can get to the quarterback, you're going to make yourself a ton of money. And so I think a guy like Derek Barnett can do that if you ask him to stand up in a 3-4 defense. But I think he probably would be best served in a 4-3. He just screams to me Carolina Panther. I look at this guy and I say, boy, you look like a Carolina Panther to me. I swear it would make a lot of sense if the Panthers snagged this guy at 8, but we'll see what happens. Nonetheless, relentless. This is the next pro, and this is a compliment on top of a compliment on top of a compliment. Relentlessness, hard worker, and leader is the next pro. Generally, you don't hear me speak about those types of things because in order to make those types of assertions, you got to know a guy. I don't know any of these guys, so it's hard for me to say, this guy's a tireless worker, this guy's relentless, this guy's a leader. But I'm going to tell you what, the scene at the end of the bowl game, versus, forget who they were playing, Nebraska. The scene at the end of the Nebraska game, I'm watching this game and he needs 1 sack to pass Reggie White for the all-time sack leader at Tennessee. He just needs 1 sack. And to watch the entire team, they literally had to stop the game, okay? Butch Davis had to call a timeout, or Butch, whatever his name is. And it's not Davis. I forgot his name, but he had to call a timeout because the whole team ran on the field. Joshua Dobbs, offensive guys run on the field. They were all mobbing Derek Barnett because they were so elated for him. You don't get that kind of admiration nor respect from your teammates if you're not a leader, if you're not relentless, if you're not a tireless and hard worker. I've heard nothing but good things about this guy as a hard worker, and I know that this guy's relentless and he's going to give you everything he's got. He was at the combine. He had the flu. He was not feeling well. He could have said, nah, I'll just work out at my pro day. No, he went and he gutted it out. He was having a tough time keeping fluids down the 2 days prior to the on-the-field drills. He still went out and performed well for a guy not feeling 100%. And then he had a situation at his pro day where he wasn't feeling the greatest, still went out and performed. This is the type of guy that just shows up and gets the job done regardless. There's no excuses from him. These are the types of players that you want to build your locker room around. You want an influx of guys like Derek Barnett on your football team. I think he's the perfect teammate. And so that's another pro for Derek Barnett. If you're looking at this type of person, not just the player, the type of person you're getting in your locker room, he's the type of guy that you're looking to fill your locker room with. These are the types of guys you can win with on a consistent basis. Able to drop into coverage. Now, I'm not saying that this is something you want this man doing on a consistent basis, but he's able to. This is why I feel comfortable with him converting to an outside linebacker at the next level, is because I feel like he can make the transition from a more traditional defensive end in a base 4-3 package to a guy that can stand up, and he did stand up quite a bit at Tennessee, so it's not like it's uncommon for him or he's uncomfortable in a 2-point stance versus being in a 3-point stance. But I think this is a guy that would make that transition. They dropped him into coverage at Tennessee quite a bit. He was able to run into the flats and do a solid enough job in space there. He's a guy that did move around and let's go ahead and talk about versatility while we're here, because all of this to me is encompassing. He's a guy that I think you can stand up as a 3-4 outside linebacker, convert him, have him be a big guy in a 3-4 defense as an outside edge rusher, and that's fine. Set a physical edge, which is what he'll be able to do at 260 pounds. Be able to get after the quarterback. I think he does a phenomenal job of bending, that corner. And we call it, I talked about this last year, running the track. You got to be able to run that track, and you got to be able to bend that edge. And a lot of guys aren't able to do that. Okay, now, because he's so aggressive with bending the edge, sometimes he'll fall on the ground. But it doesn't stop his relentless motor from trying to get to the quarterback. In one game, I saw him get a sack where he's bending that edge, and he bends it at such a sharp angle that he falls, but he still gets his arm out there and clips, literally gets a piece of the toe of the quarterback, and he goes down and he gets the sack. So this guy's relentless. You can stand him up as an edge rusher in the 3-4. You can put his hand in the dirt in the 4-3. And I think either way, this guy's going to be fine, A-okay, in whatever you ask him to do. And I think that's part of that versatility that I'm talking about for him, potentially at the next level. And then finally, his final pro, historic collegiate production, 33 sacks, 52 tackles for loss, left Tennessee as the all-time sack leader at the school, passing the legendary Reggie White, who had 32 sacks in his collegiate career at Tennessee. And so that was a long-standing record from the 1980s that was passed by Barnett. The first ever Tennessee volunteer to start on the defensive line as a true freshman, and he lit it up in that freshman season. Double-digit sacks, 10 or 12 and a half sacks in that season, and 20 and a half tackles for loss as a freshman. Are you kidding me? He was tremendous throughout his career, posting double-digit sacks 3 consecutive years, the only player in SEC history to do so. That is phenomenal. He leaves college football as one of the top 7 pass rushers in terms of sacks all time on that list. So you're talking about a prolific sack getter and a quarterback bagger. And this is a guy that I don't know if everything he does translates to the next level, but I will tell you this: the guy knows how to get to the quarterback indeed. So we go from all of those pros and things that I think are going to help him along his journey in transforming from a college football star to an NFL player, to some of the things that I think he's going to have to just adjust or get better at in order to improve his game. We're talking about Derek Barnett and his cons. So you start with Derek Barnett's cons, and the first one for me is he's not a great athlete. He's not going to ever wow you with his athleticism, which is so surprising how dominant he was and his get-off was at college, because this guy's doing this and he's not a tremendous athlete. At the combine, he ran a 4.88 40, and I thought to myself, well, maybe he's just feeling sick, and maybe he'll run better at his pro day. He ran a 4.9 in his pro day, so he's not a fast guy. But look, bottom line is he knows how to use his hands. He knows how to time up snaps. So him not being a great athlete doesn't really hurt him necessarily in the pass rushing department. Where it does hurt him, though, is redirecting. This guy is not great at stopping and starting. He's not great at change of direction. So let's say that first play of the game, he gets drafted by, let's say, the Carolina Panthers, and the first play of the game versus the Atlanta Falcons, they decide to go boot. And he sucks up the boot action, and Matt Ryan is coming back out the back door, and he's looking to plant, stop, turn, and redirect and get after Matt Ryan. He just isn't capable of doing that very fluidly at all, okay? He's one of those guys that just really finds it hard. And when you got a 260-pound frame, it is a little tough sometimes. But I'm going to tell you something else. I think he can bulk up a little bit more and cut. He's got some really excess fat on his body that I think is slowing him down. I think he can run faster than a 4.9. Okay, I think he can be a little bit more dynamic and explosive. I think he can change direction better. If he were to cut some of that bad weight and turn it into muscle, I think Derek Barnett might be served a lot better. And I think if he gets with the right team and gets with the right right trainer and gets into a better condition, and it may take a year or two in the league, but if he gets with the right team and they come up with a nice plan for him, I think this is a guy that could morph into a big-time pass rusher at the next level if he could really just trim off some of that unnecessary weight that he has. I think there was one sack I saw him getting. I saw gut, and I'm like, you got to clean that up, bro. So he's not the greatest athlete, doesn't redirect well, but I think, again, in a year or two with the right program, this is a guy that could probably shave off a few pounds, bulk back up, turn it into muscle, and really be a force at the next level. He's a snap count guesser. I talked about that with Solomon Thomas and how you can get these guys to jump off sides. You got a really good cadence, all right? And you can switch it up a little bit. You can get these guys to give you a free 5 yards. He's another one of those guys. I've talked about him needing, and that's the thing about Myles Garrett. He didn't need to jump the snap count. He's so explosive and dynamic as an athlete. He didn't need any of that extra hijinks to get to the quarterback. Whereas with Solomon Thomas, even though he's a really great athlete, he still loves jumping the snap count. Derek Barnett does it out of necessity. I just told you he's not a great athlete. So in order to win with pure speed, he needs to get off the ball, and sometimes he guesses wrong, and that's a free 5 yards. And I actually watched a game where he had a couple of false start penalties. Actually, the tackle got away with one. He actually flinched, and they called Barnett for offsides. They were wrong on that one. But yeah, he's a guy that will jump offsides. You got to watch him. But being in the SEC, you see a guy going up against big-time tackles, and I thought he really acquitted himself well. Cam Robinson, I thought he embarrassed Cam Robinson. I told you I'm not a Cam Robinson fan, and it's games like that that make me even more definitive in my stance against Cam Robinson as a big-time tackle at the next level. But we'll see. I thought Derek Barnett had his way with Cam Robinson, ate his lunch. Anyway, final con is he needs to have more of a rush plan. I think he's one of these guys that at Tennessee relied too heavily on just the speed rush up the field. There was no counter to that. There was no hard back inside. There was no spin move. There was nothing extra special other than I'm going to just beat you with what I have, and I'm going to use my hand usage and my ability to fight with my hands and be quick with my hands to get to where I want to go. But what happens when that doesn't work at the next level? What happens when you go up against better tackles, more athletic tackles that have the foot speed to get out of their stance and get into their kick slide and get their hands on you? And I just need him to be a little bit more dynamic as a pass rusher. He needs more moves, and maybe he'll develop it, maybe he won't, we'll see. But it was good enough for him to get 33 career sacks at Tennessee, that's for sure. So we'll see what happens with Barnett. I'm impressed. I think this is a guy that can help you. I think he needs to cut some of that excess weight down, though, and get into tip-top shape if he wants to excel and take his game to the next level. But one thing's for sure, the man knows how to get to the quarterback, and I expect him to continue that at the next level. That's Derek Barnett and his Draft Prospects 101 breakdown. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here on the Louie Tee Network. Got more breakdowns for you, man. The draft is coming ever so fast, so I'm going to get as many of these done as I possibly can. I'm going to see you next time. Have a good one.